Hey guys, welcome to Kidmissing TV. This is our final case of June. This is Nathaniel Jonah. He was born David Paul Brown. He was born in Worcester. He was raised in Webster. He was a child predator here in Massachusetts. He was in Bridgewater State Hospital, which is a state hospital here in Massachusetts that is specifically for the criminally insane, and they also take sex offenders, prey on children. We've had other lovelies there too. Oh, Wayne Chapman. No. But the sexual offender program he supposedly went through. Yeah, okay. He moved to, after he got out of jail, got out of the program, he was paroled to Montana, much to the chagrin of the police in Montana once they found out what he was. He was a child serial offender who was at that time an active murder suspect in Massachusetts for the murder or the disappearance and suspected murder of Andrew Amato from Webster, Massachusetts. We know now, well, police know who killed him. They're just not saying it out loud. I guess he comes from a prominent family. They know approximately where he's buried. But like I said, he was an active suspect in that case at the time for years. Because well, I guess he was a potential suspect. He became an active suspect when the boy's name was on his list that he had in his home. His crimes started in 1964. When he got a Ouija board for his 7th birthday. What a lovely present. Using the promise of trying the board out, he lured a 5-year-old neighbor into his basement. There, he tried to strangle her. Luckily, the girl's screams alerted Jonah's mother, who ran downstairs and forced him to let her go. His mother likely assumed that the boy didn't know what he was doing, and nothing came of the incident. But in 1979, Jonah decided to try again. Promising another neighbor, a 6-year-old boy, that they could go sledding, Jonah lured the child to a secluded area. He then sexually assaulted him. This became a pattern for him. As he grew older, he developed a more sophisticated technique gaining access to victims. This man was huge, over 300 pounds, intimidating. He tried to sexually assault and strangle a boy in 1975 on his way to school, but a neighbor saw him abduct the boy and called the police. Police got there before the boy was murdered. He got first sentence to a year's probation. Really? 3 years later, he abducted another 2 boys from the movie theater after claiming to be a police officer and telling them they were under arrest. He handcuffed the boys before taking them to a secluded area and molesting them. Trying to silence a potential witness, Jonah began strangling one of the children. When he was convinced the boy was dead, he put the other victim in his trunk and drove away. Luckily, the boy had actually survived the attack and ran to get help. He was soon found with the other victim still in his trunk. He was charged with attempted murder and sentenced to 18 to 20 years. That should have been the end of the story. That's just my little opinion. While in prison, he began meeting with a psychiatrist. After hearing him describe his fantasies, which revolved around murdering, dissecting, and eventually eating children, the psychiatrist recommended that he be moved to a mental hospital. But in 1991, a judge concurred with psychiatric evaluations that had somehow found him to not be a dangerous threat. Inexplicably, the judge agreed to release Jonah on probation if he moved to Montana to live with his mother, though it was recommended he seek psychiatric help. Yet nobody in Massachusetts followed up with the probation officer in Montana, and nobody there had any idea. That's when he changed his name to Nathaniel Jonah. But despite the name change, he had changed little else about himself. In 1996, 10-year-old Zachary Ramsay disappeared on his way to school. His parents filed a missing persons report, but the local police department wasn't used to this sort of crime. With few leads, the case went cold. Meanwhile, Jonah was living in a nearby apartment complex. There, he'd secretly been luring young boys from the area inside his apartment before sexually assaulting them. He'd even installed a pulley from the ceiling where he hung at least one of them by the neck. Good Lord, yet these crimes went undiscovered. A woman became suspicious of him because her own son became withdrawn and angry after spending time with him. But no one thought that someone in Great Falls could be molesting children, and no one suspected that Jonah was a murderer. The other neighbors did notice that the food Jonah made for them was full of strange meat that they couldn't identify. When asked, Jonah claimed that it had come from a deer he shot, though no one knew Jonah to ever go hunting. He was arrested in 1999 outside of a local elementary school carrying a fake gun and dressed as a police officer. At first, the charge was impersonating a police officer, but when police searched Jonah's home, they made a shocking discovery. The list and other writings. He even had a a homemade recipe book with recipes such as barbecued kid, sex a la carte, my little kid dessert, little boy stew, little boy pot pies, and lunches served on the patio with roasted child, were all entries in his twisted writings. Taken with the meat grinder that police found in Jonah's home, the writings raised a dark suspicion. Thinking of the strange meals Jonah had fed them, his neighbors began to wonder if Jonah had murdered Ramsay and fed them his flesh. But Jonah denied that he'd killed Ramsay at all. Oh my God. At this point, when they realized what they had, and that Massachusetts had not let them know, issues between the Webster Police Department and the police department in Great Falls came to the surface. They were very angry. They were very angry at the whole stinking Commonwealth. I mean, you can't blame them. Instead, Jonah was sentenced to 130 years in prison for the molestation charges. Others in town wanted to take their own form of justice. One resident told the press that if Jonah were released, his life wouldn't be worth a plug nickel around here. But no one would ever get the chance to kill Nathaniel Jonah. He was found dead in his cell in 2008. Morbidly obese, he died from cardiovascular disease. To this day, we don't know how many people he actually killed. And, by the way, I think the scariest part about what we don't know is that because he lived in Webster, Massachusetts. You know, they always say he was born in Worcester. Yeah, we all were. Um, in a hospital. God, I hope he wasn't born in the same hospital I was. Anyway, um, he was raised in Webster, the next town directly over from mine. And because he lived in Webster, he had access to the borders of Connecticut and Rhode Island for victims. Easy access. Um, Excuse me. So that's kind of a scary thought. Um, I just had a brilliant idea. I'm going to have to. Anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate all your subscribes, and I hope that if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet and you've watched a few or you're watching it for the first time, go ahead and hit that button, hit that bell. Trying to get to 500 subscribers by August 4th. Thank you so much for joining me for the month of June. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.